Okay, this meeting is being recorded. There we go. So, well, first off, thanks everybody and for joining in on this. This is quite a treat to be hands across the water, as it were. Um, I, I'm glad that I got this invitation because I have to tell you that I'm a bit of a bugbear about travel journals. My From whatever you know, my background, I spent my career in the museum and archives field, and we would have people coming in and asking about their ancestors, and often we could give them some background on where they were born, where they died, who they worked for, those kinds of things. But it really struck me at one point when a woman came in looking for an ancestor of hers, and she paused at one point and she put her hand on her heart and she said, "But I want to know something about who they were." And there really wasn't very much that we could add to that story for her, sadly. Um, so I kind of, and I've been doing these travel journals myself for years and years, and really in a more formal way for probably the last 10 years. So it really struck a chord in me to try to kind of take on this mission and try to get people to do travel journals. And I know people have been writing journals for a long time, but I have to tell you, you couldn't pay me to sit down and write a journal about what happened every day. But a travel journal, on the other hand, is a very different beast, and they really turn my crank. So there's kind of where they come from for me, and in a more formal way, in the last 10 years, I've been doing these long distance wilderness paddle trips, starting with a trip down the Columbia River from Invermere in British Columbia, 1,500 kilometers down, 1,800 kilometers down the river systems of the Columbia River to Fort Astoria. It took us 6 weeks. It was to commemorate David Thompson's mapping of the Pacific Northwest, and it was an amazing journey to go on, and I've got all of those journals from that time to pass on to my kids. So um, so what I'm going to do here today is to give you, it's a PowerPoint, and I'll go through some of the basics that I think you'll probably find useful. I'm a practical guy in lots of ways. I'm you know my ancestry is Scottish, so I'm cheap as well. So um, you know I'm I try to think of things as being cost effective. How's that? Practical and cost effective. So, and then at the end, I've got some examples to show you of just how straightforward this can be. So I'm going to turn on the screen share here, and we can get going. Where is it here? Share, and then down here. There we go. Have you all got that now? Thumbs up? Yeah. Okay. So we'll start here. I call this the proof of life because I guess the whole notion of working in the museum and archives is that this kind of presentation is for me to help you live forever, right? How's that for prophetic, eh? This is one of those proof of life things. And I'm a geographer by training, and geographers have been doing journals for hundreds of years. So this is the cover of my Mackenzie River trip in 2014. Decho is the Dene name for the Mackenzie River. So the Mackenzie Decho Expedition, 2014, an inward journey and an outward experience. And there's the signatures of everybody who went along on that journey. We had three 26-foot Voyageur canoes. They normally seat 6 people each, but we took out the 2 center seats in order to get all of our gear in, because once you're in, you're in. You come out in a Nuvik, or you come out in a body bag. This is the Canadian Arctic wilderness. So it was an amazing journey. So this whole notion, if you write these journals down, they'll be kept and passed on. They really are a legacy of who you are. And I don't think there's ego in that. I think there's really good historical value. I think there's good family value. Um, I'm constantly talking to my mom, who's 91, about all of her ancestors that she met and knew in Scotland, and on both sides of the family. And those are important memories to me, and whatever she has written down is even more valuable. So think about keeping a travel journal. Think about your why. Why do you want to keep it, and pass these journals on to you, onto your kids and grandkids. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through the journal. This is kind of an outline of what we'll do, the tools and materials, what to include or not, what to do afterwards, some truisms that I think are there about journals, and then we'll get to Q&A after that. So if you do these travel journals, I want you to put yourself in the category of these people. For hundreds or thousands of years, people have been keeping travel journals. And while Charles Darwin or James Cook might be the radial end, you're the distal end of that story. You're the modern version of those people. And I don't think there's ego all tied up in that stuff. I think people need to be writing these journals, these experiences down. So when you take a trip, whether it's on a short local river, just keep a journal of what you're doing on those rivers, what you saw, what you felt, who you met, all of those kinds of things. That'll eventually become part of certainly your family record. But there's having worked in a museum for all of those decades, I think there's a good societal value in knowing what happened. Because for the most part, history is about rich white men, and we need to hear the stories and experiences of other people as well. So for the basics of the travel journal, when you get it down, this is on the Mackenzie River. This is one of the mornings we got up. It was just, the river is kilometers wide in that point. 20% of Canada goes down that one river. Absolutely stunning. And it was dead calm, beautiful morning, and it was going to be hot. You could see not a cloud in the sky. So on your journal, I think it's good to leave a title page. And it kind of orients somebody to when they're looking at it, 100 years from now. What is this journal about? Put your name down there. Don't be shy about this. This is your journal. Other people can write what they want, but this is yours. Get some contact information. Now put that either on the title page or on the back page, just so that there's some kind of, if you lose it, you might end up getting it back if you've got some contact information. And another trick with travel journals is to write every day, and often try to write at the same time every day. And I think you'll find that it will become an easier routine if you write every day and you write at the same time every day. I know there was one of those days on the Mackenzie River. We were there for a month going down that river, and for some reason I forgot to write something on that one day. And I remember going around to my paddle colleagues and saying, what the heck did we do yesterday? What did we see? Just so I could go back and recapture that. So if you put it into a routine, it's going to be easier for you to carry on. The journal itself, and I'll show you these toward the end. This is the journal that I use. It's about 7.5 by 10 or 11, something like that. It's coil bound. It's hardcover. You want something that's durable, and because it's coil bound, it opens flat, so it'll take up less room. You can fold it right back on itself. So really handy in that regard. When it comes to the size of the travel journal, you want it small enough that you can keep it with you, but large enough that you can work with it comfortably. The other thing about size in the journal is the page count. And this is a bit of psychology going on here. You see these journals that I have, they're about 15 pages. The journals are watercolor paper, so it's a more durable paper. You can paint on it, you can sketch on it, you can write in it. And watercolor paper, as I say, it's a heavier paper, so a bit more durable. But it's only 15-ish pages on that. So you can actually finish the journal and put it aside. And here's the psychology. You feel like you've accomplished something. If I turn around and take one of these larger journals with like 100 pages in it, by the time you get to the, you can come off a week-long paddle trip and say, and it looks and feels kind of disappointing. You've only done 10 pages in 100 pages. Oh no. So help yourself out psychologically. And when you've got a half a dozen or 10 of these up on your bookshelf, I think it's good for your mental state to look at those. I did all of those trips. I actually did those, and you're sitting down perhaps with a grandchild on your knee and they say, what did you do? You could say, well, actually, just a moment, I'll tell you what I did. And you can pull out those journals and start going through them. So think about taking something with a bit smaller page count in that. The materials I use, I've got to tell you, it's a really basic toolkit. I take pens with me. These are the pens that I use. It's a Pigma Micron pen, and they come in different sizes. The museum guy in me, they're acid-free, they're waterproof, they're black. The tip is a bit soft, so you can't really press hard on them. Otherwise they destroy pretty quickly. But these, I've used these for 10 years now, and they are a lifesaver. So waterproof, acid-free, black is good. Take an HB pencil along with you, just to buy them at a dollar store. Get a bunch of 10 HB pencils. I used to travel with 2B pencils, but they're kind of soft, and they can, when they're in a travel journal, they can kind of smudge a bit. So I've gone back to using an HB pencil. A pencil sharpener. Get yourself a metal pencil sharpener. The plastic ones are, they're just not as durable. For an eraser, I just use a Staedtler Mars white eraser. They're cheap, good to use. Watercolor paint set. I use what's called a Yarka student set of paints, and I'll show you them here when we're done with the PowerPoint. It's got about 10 colors in it. It cost me in Canada here, I think, about $10. So that's what, £5, £7, something like that. So they're really, again, they're really cost effective. They're a decent quality watercolor. And if you're on a trip and you lose them, you can replace them easily, and you're not going to beat yourself up. You can buy Newton Windsor travel journal watercolor paint kits for like $150, $100. And if you lose one of those, you're going to be pretty mad at yourself. If you lose an $8 paint set, you can replace it and you're not going to be mad at yourself. So this, it's a good quality piece, I think. I always take a glue stick with me, because sometimes you want to do a quick sketch on perhaps when you're traveling, you're staying every night in a small hotel or bed and breakfast, and they've got a little scratch pad beside the phone. Take that scratch pad with you, and you might do a little pencil sketch without your journal with you, and then you glue it in later. And when you glue it in, just glue it along the top. Don't glue the whole thing in, just glue it along the top. In the printing business, that's called tipping in. You tip in that little sketch. Take a waterproof folder with you for all of the gear. All of these things, my travel journal kit, I keep it in a Ziploc bag. I don't know what they have in the UK that's equivalent to that, but it's a waterproof Ziploc bag for your food. And when I'm on the river, I'll usually keep it in two. But remember, they sweat. So when you're stopped, take it out of that waterproof folder and let it breathe again. Otherwise, your paper might get damp. So those freezer bags are really pretty handy and valuable, and again, cost effective. We can get 20 of them for £1 or something here. They're pretty cheap. So what to include in the journal? Think about using all of your senses. So if you're traveling somewhere and you stop at a market, think about what you're smelling in that market, the spices, perhaps the fruits and vegetables. Think about the sounds in that market you're visiting. Um, what's the kind of rhythm and pattern of life in that market that you're visiting? So think about sights, sounds, smells, tastes, etc. Don't worry about trying to include everything. You'll never include everything. So I'll take the burden off you. Don't include everything. Just include what's important to you. So what is it about this market? You know, you were told that this is a really world famous market, and you got there and you thought to yourself, meh, you know, well, that's an important, that's your own experience. Is here they built up this market as being one of the world-renowned farmers markets or local markets, and you got there and you thought to yourself, why is this so famous? Because it's kind of ho-hum. Or maybe it was in fact absolutely stupendous, and then write down what it was about it, that it had these tasting booths for herbs and spices that you couldn't even imagine. When you're writing in it, certainly this is going to get passed down to future generations and perhaps into archives eventually. But don't worry about pleasing anybody. This is your travel journal. If somebody doesn't like it, to hell with them. It's not their journal. Thank you very much. Okay, so don't worry about, write what's only important to you and what you see and what you experience, who you met, those kinds of things. And you can make changes in the journals. I have to tell you, when you look at these journals of mine, you can see places where I've scratched out words, and there it is there, scratched out the word. Who cares? It's your journal. If somebody doesn't like it, tell them to write their own journal. I grew up with 3 brothers and 2 sisters. Somebody doesn't like my journal, I'm more than comfortable telling them to write their own. So don't worry about making those changes. They tell what's important about you. Again, what to include. Think about the text that you've got. I think a lot of people, when they think about travel journals, they think they have to write a whole story, and that's just not the case. You write a little vignette about watching somebody in that market sell that bag of oranges, and just how good that market owner was in selling that bag of oranges, where the person only came to buy 2 and they took away 10. Do little sketches, little maps. I'm a geographer by training. That's my academic background. And I don't think there's a journal that I've done that doesn't have a map of our campsite, a map of where we stopped and had lunch one day, those kinds of things. So they provide some context. You can write lists if you're a birder. Write lists of all of the birds that you saw as you traveled down that river, or you were on a cycling trip, or you were on a hiking trip. What was your itinerary? Some of you are going to find that you're very good at recording dialogue, and you'll notice that people tell stories and eavesdrop. When you're in a pub that you stopped at for lunch, just listen to the conversations that are going along, and you might find yourself listening into some really interesting little local story that you could add, that adds the flavor to the place, because places do have flavor. Include a date and a time and a place where you are. Generally, I'll start off my entries with an actual date, so that, and I usually put this stuff in chronological order. You can put it in thematic order if you want, but I usually do it chronological. Add some contact details for people that you meet. And you might want to take those, and instead of incorporating them into the body of the daily routine that you're writing about and sketching about, put them on a back page so that you've got them all together, of those interesting people that you met that you might want to get back in touch with again for the next leg of your journey, or some special experience that you wanted to participate in down the road. Then you'll have the contact information. my Starbucks coffee that I got this morning. I just reheated it, you know. Um, and think about scrapbooking it. You know, if you've gone to a really interesting concert, you might want to take the ticket for that concert, glue just along the top of it, and glue it into your travel journal, and then write what that concert was like, who was playing, what you saw, what you did, who was with you, that they played. You know, you saw Rod Stewart in a one-off concert that nobody was expecting, and he played Rhythm of My Heart that you absolutely love. Well, write all of that stuff down. Maybe you had an incredible bottle of wine. Well, take the label off of that wine, glue down one side of it only, tip it into your travel journal, and then write about that lunch and what it was like and who you were with and what you ate and how the wine paired so beautifully with it. All of those kinds of things. So think about, that's why you've got the glue stick along in your travel kit. So lots of things to include, and there's lots more you can include in this. There are a few things that I would say not to include in your travel journals. And one of those things is plant material. If you're traveling, especially if you're traveling internationally, you may end up having your travel journal taken away because you decided to press a flower or a plant and put it into your travel journal. Because in many cases, you can't travel across an international boundary with plant material. Countries are generally pretty persnickety about that kind of thing. So make sure you just take a photo of it, draw a sketch of that plant material, and then and do that way. I worked, as I say, the bulk of my career in the museum field, and for the last 8 years now, I work with land trusts. And I can tell you, as someone who works with land trusts, you know, the movement of plant and animal material from one location to another has been pretty problematic, especially for island settings where environmental limits are really close at hand. So do your part in all of that, and just don't include plant material and insects, that kind of thing, where you squish them and glue them in or tape them into your travel journal. Yeah. The other third thing I've written down here about what not to include is kind of opinions. Now, let me tell you about opinions, because on that 6-week travel trip down the Columbia River, there were some people that you really got along with at the beginning that by the end of the 6 weeks, you were pretty tired of, you know. So you can record those opinions, but just before you do that, just be really thoughtful about how you might do that. You might get across that opinion with a really poignant little vignette that you write down about that about that person through a certain experience. So, you know, as I say, once you're dead, who cares? But in the meantime, you know, just, you know, I'm a 60s hippie kind of guy. You know, it's all love, peace, and happiness. So I want everybody to get along. So, but at the same right, as human beings on the planet, we actually reserve the right to our own opinion. Thank you very much. So include opinions, but just be thoughtful and respectful about how you do them. So that's my cautionary note for opinions. And finally, there's what to do afterwards. And what I've included here is a few things that I'll get to. I'll show as examples when we're done here. But you can go on to online platforms and take your journal entries, type them out, and put them in chronologically with photos, with sketches, those kinds of things. And do a coffee table book, do a little photo book, those kinds of things through Blurb, through Shutterfly. There are a number of really good online publishing platforms. You can do lectures. I know that the group of us who did the Columbia River trip and the Mackenzie River trip, we went to the local museum where I used to be the executive director, and we went to them and said, look, would you like us to do a talk about our month-long trip down the Mackenzie River in the Canadian Arctic? And they said, sure. So we put a lecture together. We brought in one of the 26-foot Voyager canoes. We had 200 or 300 people there. We did a slideshow PowerPoint kind of thing and a talk and a question and answer afterwards. And they made my local museum made about $800 in donations that day to support the museum. So maybe you've got a church group, maybe you've got a birding group that you belong to. So think about extending the reach of your travel journal and your experience beyond the actual journal itself. And I've just put a little note here about proofreading in the end. What I did with mine was I took and did a dummy in the printing business. It's called a dummy when you do up a piece ahead of time. And I took that, I copied it about half a dozen times and gave it to friends who I knew were really literate people. And they went through and edited it because I'm a terrible speller. I get my diphthongs all mixed up, my I's and E's and A's and E's, and I can't actually hear them. So it was really good to have that kind of support in proofreading those the journals. So this is what I did with the Arctic journey. The Mackenzie River Decho expedition. There it is. There's the byline by Wayne Wilson. And this is actually stopping on the side of the river for it's called a bio break. Somebody needs to get off and go for a pee. So there's our 3 canoes, 1, 2, and 3. We're stopped. We're having a bite to eat, some water. And this is what's called point separation. So if you go down, if you miss this point and heading into the East Channel and you get that, you can see my cursor here. If you hit that area there, you are in trouble because the Mackenzie River is going to take you to the Arctic Ocean. So you need to really hug river right and go down the East Channel, which ends up at Inuvik, where we could drive out down the Dempster Highway. So, but this is one of the things that you can do with your travel journal. You could take and do some artwork. So this is a photograph that I took on the Rideau Canal in downtown Ottawa. So there's the big Chateau Hotel there. You can just see the Parliament buildings in Ottawa down on the left there. And so I took this photograph and I made it into, do you remember, maybe you remember doing lino cuts when you were in public school. Well, I took it and I did a lino cut and I made a limited edition print out of the lino cut for going back. So there's the photograph and I just transferred it into a lino cut. So there's lots of things that you can do after the fact. So this is kind of final thoughts and really to take your worries away, because I know what's going to happen on this journey, this canoe trip that you're taking, or this hiking trip, or this cycling trip, or a cruise maybe. If you travel with friends or family are particularly tough with this. Somebody's going to say, but hey, Wayne, that's not the way I remember that happening. You know, this is what I found is one of the easiest things to do, is just to say, isn't that interesting? I'll tell you what, how about if you write down what your version of X, Y, and Z, and then we could chat about the differences. And see the bottom here? I bet they won't do it. In fact, I'll almost guarantee that they won't do it. And 100 years from now, yours is going to be the only experience that's written down. You will be the one who's living forever, and they'll be forgotten because they didn't write it down. So there's a really good, you don't have to be confrontational. Just say, oh, that's really interesting. Tell you what, how about if you do your version, and then we can chat about how different we saw it, and just leave it at that. And you know, the first person who speaks after that loses. So that's the experience from my brothers and sisters. What if I don't have anything to say on your travel journal? And my only answer to this is nonsense. You're either being lazy or you're fearful. And the fact that you're on this presentation here today, I think demonstrates that you're not lazy. And the fact that you're doing a travel journal and even thinking about it is you're not lazy. Most people would do it because they're fearful. They don't know what to write in it. And we've talked about that. They're leery about sketching. Well, start to just doodle on the back of an envelope, and pretty soon you'll be surprised at how quickly you'll get better at it. So there are lots of reasons for you to do a travel journal. So take those fears away, and 100 years from now, you're going to have that travel journal experience being looked at and remined for historical significance. So these are some of the truisms that I'll finish off with here. You will get better at this. The more travel journals you do, the more you'll see that you're recording things. Your language is getting more clear and more explanatory and more colorful. So you will get better at it. Remember what our parents told us when we were kids, eh? Practice makes perfect, right? So start off, the key is to just start off doing this. Number two here is don't die for your journal. Depending, where some of you travel may be in some pretty sketchy places. And remember to, if you need to leave your travel journal behind and get out, then get out. Always get out with your life. And remember, the bottom line in that, there's always a good story in a near-death experience, right? I don't know if it's so much the case over in the UK, but Canada is a pretty wild place for the most part. And almost every year, in fact, easily every year in British Columbia anyways, there are lots and lots of rivers, and urban people in particular, their little dogs will jump into a river or a creek, and the dog owner will go in after the dog, and invariably the dog owner will drown. Almost guaranteed. And almost guaranteed the dog will get out. Same thing with your journal. Leave it behind. Get out. Okay, so there, anyways, I haven't been in one of those situations, but people travel all kinds of unusual places. My older brother has a friend who cycles around the world, and he's been in some pretty sketchy places. Leave your journal behind. And the final one is that people will be surprised when they see these journals. They'll be in awe of you. They'll say, "You did this?" So there's the thing. Remember what your mom taught you. Accept a compliment gracefully. Thanks. It's just these are the people who keep these journals are a rare beast, and people are in awe that you actually took the time to do that. And they'll be envious that you've got something to pass on to your children and your grandchildren, so that when I'm 68 now, and I'm sitting down with my grandkids, and they're going through these journals, and what I hope it's doing is I hope it's encouraging their curiosity to go and to see things that are new and different to them. So, and your journal is a great way to inspire your children and your grandchildren, your descendants. So there we go. I'm gonna end this share now and show you a couple of things here that we can get on to. So I'll be back in 2 seconds here.
1, 2. Maybe for the record's sake, keep speaking. Otherwise people go like, something wrong with my computer.
Okay, so here we are back again. So in terms of the actual toolkit to take along, this is my paint kit that I take. So you use the top as a palette. It's clear, but set it on a white piece of paper, and you've got a great palette. I close it up, put a rubber band around it. The rubber band will, and I always take a few spare rubber bands, will come in handy as well. So this cost me, with tax, I think about $10. It's called a Yarka student paint set, and really pretty decent quality. I was able to find a little box kit like this for my pens and my brushes, and I only take a selection of brushes, maybe half a dozen, and then I just close this up, put a rubber band around it, and away we go. And it opens up and sits nicely like that. So the pencils are in there. There's my 2B and HB pencils, paintbrushes, and away we go. And my paintbrushes, again, what I've done here for paintbrushes is I went to my local art supply store, and they had a sample kit of paintbrushes. They're pretty good quality, and there are, I think there's half a dozen brushes in them, and they're really pretty cost effective as well. So for travel experiences, it's a pretty good solution for you. Put that down. So this is actually my travel kit. It's in a Ziploc bag. So there's pencils. There's Whitey Staedtler Mars eraser, my glue stick. Extra. It's a metal pencil sharpener, a couple of bulldog clips, handy. I've got a little kit of watercolor pencils that I use as well, but I don't use them all the time. In fact, I generally don't take them with me. The first few trips I did, but now I kind of leave it behind, but it's just in here for the moment. So, a pretty straightforward toolkit. The journals, as I say, are 11 by 17. They've got, this has got a little rubber band on it, and you can get these. This is from a trip I did down the Missouri River. So there's the title page with my byline on it, and all of the entries in it, little sketches. Just recording what we did, what we saw. And some of them I do afterwards. Like this sketch was done after I got back. I used a photograph and did that afterwards. There's another one here. This little flower piece I did while we were on the journey as well. So, and these ones are nice because they've got a little gusset pocket in the back as well. So if you've got something you want to add to your travel journal to keep in there, maybe your itinerary and how many miles between each stop, that kind of thing, you can tuck that in there. And if it didn't have it in, I would actually glue one in myself. So really handy travel journals. And these cost me, this is by our local art supply store. They cost me, I think, $15. So pretty achievably priced. Other things that you can do once you're back, you can take some of your sketches and make them into cards. We went to Zihuatanejo in Mexico for a few weeks, a couple of years ago, and I did some sketches of the little adobe houses that were there, and I took those sketches and I went on one of the online publishing platforms and I made little greeting cards out of those. So there's 4 different houses, 4 different greeting cards, and they're a great gift. I only buy on the online platform when they have a 50% off deal. So these came out, these cost me 51 cents each to produce. So, and you have to order a minimum of 10, big deal. So, it really is quite fun to have along. I did calendars. Now, this is some of my other artwork, but I took the calendar and one of the pictures in the calendar, this is a watercolor that I did of the North Saskatchewan River when we were paddling across Canada. So I took that sketch and just put it as the drawing for January, and added it to that. I've made some of my sketches into business cards. This was a piece of artwork that I did on the Missouri River trip. There's a business card with that North Saskatchewan little watercolor piece that I did as well. And here's the book that was done. It's a coffee table book. I did one for the trip across or down the Columbia River, and I did one for the Arctic as well. So there's all of the photographs. You can you just drag and drop your photos in. This is done on blurb.com, and there's no affiliation. I don't own blurb.com. Just there's lots of them publishing platforms out there. So you drag and drop the photos in, add a caption to it. The entries are just all chronological. So this one is called Back in the USA, tribute to the Beatles, from June 26th. Rough Water, June 29th. Glow in the Dark. I've just titled each one of them just for fun. So there's something you can do and sit out. So each of my kids has got a record now. They can look at, somebody comes over to their house and looks at this book, they can say, yeah, my dad did that. He's a legend, right? Nothing like vanity. So anyways, lots of things that you can do with these, with your travel journals once you're done. So anyways, I'm a geek about this stuff. I could go on and on. So why don't we just leave it there, Mark, and we can answer some questions and go from there.
Yeah, perfect. One of the questions I have is, you said you tip your little sketches in, and do you write underneath it as well, or is it?
You can. I would, sure. It's just extra space that's not wasted. The travel journals are generally pretty small, so you want to be judicious about how much where you do that. So I would probably write underneath it. Yeah.
That was going to be my question, Wayne. The amount of with 15 pages, you're limited obviously in what you can actually put in there. If you want to be as comprehensive as you seem to be, surely you're going to run out of paper, aren't you? And I can't think of anything worse than getting 3/4 of the way through the journey and then still having a quarter that you haven't got anything to put it on.
Yeah, and I actually did that on the Mackenzie River. We got, you notice in these journals, I only write on one side, okay?
Yeah.
Well, we got partway through and I realized, oh my God, we're not going to be at the end and I'm going to run out of paper. So I started writing on the facing page until I realized that I had taken a second journal along with me. So then I started on volume 2. But yeah, there's I think the company's called Strathmore, has a water color paper book that I'm going to get a copy of, just because I think it might be the next one I do. And I think it has 30 to 40 pages in it. And I think that's where I might go next. These ones work well for me. This is about the trips we've been taking have generally been 10 days to 2 weeks. And that, for me anyways, it allows me to record pretty much what I want in that. And I might start thinking about using both sides as well, but you can vary the page count, yes. The only thing that the only caution that I have is what I mentioned before, is that when you get done your journal and realize that you've only done 10 pages in it, it's a bit disappointing. But if you can actually finish a journal, it makes you feel good to have, yeah, there's my journal. That's got 3 trips in it. It's not like it's got 3 trips in it and there's still 200 pages to fill out, So it's a psychological trick. That's all it is.
Do you also find that when you start your journal, that everything is nice and neat and legible? By the time you've finished it, you can't read a word.
Yeah, it can get pretty sloppy, but that's for a translator 100 years from now to figure out. That's what they'll get paid the big bucks to do that, But yeah, it can get a bit sloppy. One of my journals is from the Mackenzie, is all mottled because when you do dishes, you have to use bleach because when you're in the wilderness, you don't want to get sick. So the cover of my journal is mottled with bleach blotches, so it can get a bit sketchy. But hey, that's the charm of having one of those journals as well. So.
Wayne, there's a question from Ilva about, is it also lightweight stuff for people who go backpacking or walking?
Yeah, well, in terms of lightweight, this is pretty much it, and I think you could probably find a place to tuck this away in. So with the journal, that's all you have. Now you can,
I had this one. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
Small
for a
little
paint set. Yeah,
set. So
absolutely.
it's not
Absolutely.
light, but it is small.
Sorry, that's my phone going off. There we go. Yeah. So
This one.
yeah, yeah. There are lots of them on the market. You know. Yeah, absolutely ideal. And you got your palette there as well. So you know it's handy. I don't take water with me usually when I travel. You know, we've on the Mackenzie we had filtered water and other places I've just taken to be honest, I've taken a plastic water bottle and cut the bottom off of it, and there's my water receptacle. You know, I'm not going to pay for one. I'm just not. You know, so
maybe the big book is maybe for a traveler who goes by bike or walking. The big book could be maybe smaller.
oh yeah, yeah. You can get watercolor books that are like half this size. You know, they're just this size here. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, so this is about 7.5 inches by about 10.5 inches. Well, you can get them, you know, 6 by 9, 5 by 8, that size. And the only thing that I do suggest is if you get it with watercolor paper, it's a bit more durable than just bond paper, you know. So
another question is, do you rewrite your journal when you got home to make it nicer to read?
Not very much. I'll edit it a bit. I'll try to correct the spelling because I'm a terrible speller, and even though I use, you know, spell check, I'm still a terrible speller. So I will clean it up a little bit, but generally not. No, if somebody's going to read that, I want them to read what the experience was like, and so yes, but marginally. Yeah.
What about your pictures? Do you write when you took a picture number 16, you wrote and what it is, so you can then find it back, and then you use?
Yeah. Generally, I don't add pictures to my travel journals. In fact, I don't think I ever have. Not that I wouldn't, but if I did add one, I would be sure that I wrote something with it, because otherwise it just becomes a photo album. And again, this is a bit of an experience from working in the museum. We would have people come in and say, oh, hi, I'm here because my parents have passed away. We're from Saskatchewan, and can you help us? We've got all of these photos and everything. There's nothing about the photos. You don't know where they are, who they are, everything. There's nothing you can do with them, you know? So if you're going to take a photo and add it to your travel journal, you have to write why you took the photo, where it is, when it was, all those kinds of things. The dates, I don't write on the photographs themselves, because I can look at it electronically, and the electronic signature will tell me when it was taken, you know. So even the time of day. So I had to go back, actually. I did a write-up for somebody on one of the Mackenzie trips, and I was able to go back in my photographs and tell them, you know, that this was when we saw the forest fire burning down to the river's edge. It was 11:30 in the morning on that day. You know, you could get down to that kind of detail. So. And have fun with it. You know, it's not a job. Don't make it a job. If it's a job, don't do it. You know, this has got to be fun. And as I say, I get a kick out of the whole notion of sitting down with one of my grandkids and saying, you know, this is what we did, and this is what it was like to be in the Arctic wilderness with a bear coming down, you know, the Travaillant River, and everybody. There were 12 of us. We had to take. We took a bear gun with us, which was, it's kind of like a shotgun, and it has a slug and shot, and a slug and a shot. It has 5 shots in it, I think. Before we all went to bed in our own tents, a semicircle around the campfire, we took that bear gun out, and everybody went over it to know how it worked, just in case that bear came into camp that night. And it wouldn't kill the bear, but it would give him a bad day, you know? So, you know, that kind of experience, and to sit down with your grandkids and to watch their eyes go buggy. I tell you, it's worth it. It's worth every penny of it. And of course, you build up the story, all right? The tall tales.
Do you want to share your presentation so people can maybe read it afterwards?
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
So we'll
Yeah,
share
yeah.
it with people.
I will tell you that I am putting an online course together on how to do travel journals. It'll be a 4-module course that I'll come out with that will deal with you know, why do a travel journal, what to include in it, a module about your travel journal kit, and then what to do afterwards. And I'm going to be adding some bonus videos on how to do some quick sketches. If you're not an artist, there are a whole range of things that you can do in very simple ways with sketching and limited watercolor that'll really add a really unique and interesting flavor to your travel journal. So that'll be coming out in, I think, the beginning of March, and I'll make sure that you know when it is and where it is. So yeah,
Because that's
but share it. Absolutely. As I say, I'm kind of a hippie about this stuff, you know. Go ahead and
it's another question, because not everybody is very good with pencil or
no,
acrylic paint or how to.
that's right.
So it would be good if there are some hints or tips how
Yeah.
to put it on.
Yeah.
Makes
So
it,
and one of the tricks about sketching is you know, you get mail daily. Take that mail, you know, if it's a white envelope with junk mail in it, throw the junk mail out, use the back of the envelope for sketching, and just doodle. And before you get embarrassed about it, throw it away, and the next day do another one. And listen, I guarantee you will get better at it, and you'll be surprised how quickly you get better at it, you know. And don't get intimidated. Don't draw the whole building. Just draw the doorway, or just draw the window. Just draw the doorstep even, you know, those kinds of things. So, you know, it's a travel journal. You probably aren't going to fill the entire page of your travel journal with a sketch. In fact, I think I've only done it maybe twice. You usually do little sketches that you write around, that kind of thing. So you're only looking at a maybe 4-inch by 4-inch kind of piece to do, and it's dead easy, you know. The other thing is if you've got questions, Mark, I think you've got my email. Please pass it along. I've included the links to the 3 blogs that I did, the one down the Columbia River, the one down the Mackenzie River, and in 2017 we paddled across Canada as well. And I did a blog each day for those, and those links, Mark has those as well. So have a look at them, and if you've got questions, I'm a pretty open guy, you know.
they are in the event on Facebook, but you have to look quickly, because if it is closed the event, nothing appears anymore. Are there any more questions?
Or get in touch and I'll just pass you the link. So yeah.
Any more questions for anybody? No. Well, it's great.
In 2018, I wrote a diary and took lots of photos. We see what's yeah, it's, you know, you will forget, you know, you will forget. And as I say, I keep going back to the notion of a market or something, you know, and you will forget the sounds of that market, you know, the smell of the spices that were in that market. And if you write it down, it'll come back to you just like that. It really is it's a kind of all sensory cue for you. And that enthusiasm will come out when you're explaining it to your grandchild as well. You know, that they'll see the spark in your eye. They really will. And the tone, the actual tone in your voice will change. I really believe that. So.
Right. Great. Thanks. I will stop the recording in a couple of minutes, seconds, and then we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wayne, for your time.
You're welcome.
Looking forward to see more of your nice journals on Facebook. Always
excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Join Hikers, Paddlers, and Travelers Journal it's a Facebook group, and we'll get lots of tips and tricks in there.
Oh, so. Why don't you share it on my Facebook page?
I'll do that.
See it, and I will put the name of people, and then people can.
Excellent. I'll do that. Yeah.
Mail it to those who don't do Facebook.
Okay.
Right, great.
All right. thanks very much, everyone. I hope you got something out of it. And as I say, don't be shy, email me and I'll answer whatever I can.
Thank you, Wayne. Much appreciated. Thoroughly
You're most
enjoyable.
welcome. Thanks.
I will stop the recording and then